Now, NASA has uncovered an astonishing discovery. This recent discovery that there was unquestionably life on Mars could alter our intentions to inhabit and use the planet indefinitely. But how do we move forward now? Can NASA still defend sending humans to Mars in light of these new findings? Although no human could ever stand or walk unprotected on Mars, we could adapt our technology to survive in the environment protected by special spacesuits and breathing systems. Mars is the planet in the solar system that most closely resembles Earth, unlike Venus. In terms of surface conditions, gravity, and temperature, Mars would be a realistic alternative to Earth, but at this point, we must seriously consider whether a human will ever set foot on Mars. The most recent findings are startling and may jeopardize NASA and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk's plans to occupy Mars as early as the 2030s. What has NASA found on Mars recently, and why is it so difficult to determine? The danger? Before NASA or SpaceX send the first humans to Mars, they want to make sure that the astronauts can survive there. The fact is that the first people to embark on this adventure will have to be astronauts who have undergone rigorous training similar to elite military fighters. These individuals must overcome incredible challenges and face impossible obstacles. Mars is a green world like our own, but it is also a desolate one. To date, we have only seen rock and endless red desert. Approximately 20 probes and stationary vehicles have thoroughly examined Mars. When combined with the radically different environmental conditions, psychological strains that we can scarcely comprehend alone in a strange place so distant from home that no support can be expected if something goes wrong can swiftly get to people. Do you know how? The first men to walk on the Moon, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, were prepared. These 3 astronauts went through a rigorous program where they were dropped over rough terrain, like a jungle or the Antarctic, with only parachutes and emergency supplies. They had to forge a path for themselves. They had to be able to survive for days and weeks in isolation and possess the fortitude to face unknown risks. Even though the approach to Mars carries a risk that we currently find difficult to calculate, if the missions fail, the names of the first Mars explorers will likely be quickly forgotten. All these aspects of space travel are quickly forgotten when we look at the glorious images of the moon landing and the frantic honor paid to the astronauts afterwards. The majority of volunteers who have signed up to explore Mars so far are soldiers, primarily fighter pilots who later pursue a career as astronauts. These pioneers typically have an almost insatiable curiosity and thirst for adventure, and the unique opportunity to be the first to explore a distant world like Mars is what drives them. The names of the Apollo astronauts who burned alive in the capsule during a first test run on Earth are hardly known today. Despite extensive research, we still know very little about Mars and virtually nothing about the risks that people will face and how they will react there. Did you know that Mars is trembling all the time? It's amazing that this planet seems to undergo internal shocks rather frequently, which causes more or less severe earthquakes. There may be dangers on Mars that we haven't yet been able to comprehend. Although they are more frequent than earthquakes on Earth, Mars earthquakes are often less destructive. We don't know much about the planet's interior, which may be a threat that we haven't fully recognized. Thus far, seismic measurements of Mars earthquakes have produced incredible findings. Because quakes can penetrate the planet's upper layers with an ultrasound and tell a great deal about its composition, scientists may be able to listen to Mars's interior and discover hidden cavities. Understanding the inner workings of Mars is crucial to understanding movements on the surface. Imagine that Mars is partially porous or brittle in its interior. In the worst case, entire regions could rupture or collapse. And now imagine that there are settlements there on Earth. We are familiar with such phenomena as suddenly sinking neighborhoods or even crevices like the San Andreas Fault. In addition, scientists are naturally eager to learn what is really in any cavities under the Martian surface. Simulations have shown that Mars could have been a similarly vibrant world to Earth a few 100 million years ago. It is possible that Mars had forests, rivers, oceans, clouds, weather, and a climate that was subtropical or Mediterranean, then the planet changed. It increasingly lost its atmosphere, and thus the ability to bind liquid water on the surface. Little by little, life disappeared, and eventually only what we can see today remained: endless rocky deserts. But researchers have also found that certain residues from this living time could have retreated underground, similar to the relics of the dinosaur age, millions of years ago, hidden in the depths of the Earth's layers, with caves, mine shafts, and possibly even underground lakes and oceans. Below them, similar residues could have formed on Mars, if there ever was life or even civilization on Mars. Its relics would now be buried under a layer of debris and rock that is several meters or even hundreds of meters thick. But what if our settlers and explorers begin to make discoveries at these depths that we hadn't reckoned with, or that are even dangerous? Imagine that at some point extraterrestrial explorers or our own descendants unsuspectingly dig up our underground nuclear waste storage facilities, or come across barrels of poisons and other waste that we humans store in tunnels and underground galleries. Mars as a habitable world, have you ever heard of? Terraforming, it sounds crazy, but Elon Musk's plans include bombing the cold poles of Mars with nuclear explosive devices to melt the water, create an artificial greenhouse effect, and thus create a kind of biosystem. In theory, at least as utopian as it may sound, plans for terraforming are scientifically proven it could really work, but what do we do if we no longer have control over the cycles that we have initiated? What if we upset the balance of Mars and possibly even endanger our own planet? Some scientists warn against overly crazy plans to intervene massively in a distant world. We must not see our planet as an isolated war world, similar to how all systems on our Earth are interconnected and interact. It is the same in space, even if Mars is far away and other planets are even further away or seem distant to us. These celestial bodies are all somehow connected. We don't know what would happen if we artificially transformed Mars into a habitable world. And we also don't know whether our world only became habitable because Mars no longer was itself to this day. We don't know exactly how life came to Earth. It could theoretically have come from Mars. The current rover missions are revealing astonishing things. We humans have now invested billions of dollars in Mars exploration. Currently, the Perseverance and Ingenuity rovers are the most active on Mars. The two are separately exploring crater worlds that appear to have once been lakes or small seas. So far, neither of the two rovers has found any evidence of bacterial life or anything similar, but there are indications of liquid cycles and phenomena, such as erosion. Among the strangest finds are a structure resembling a coral and stones that sparkle strangely. These could be the first indications that Mars is not quite as boring as we thought, although the two rovers are constantly treating us to new images and showing us impressively sharp pictures of Mars. We have to realize that they are proceeding incredibly slowly. Both rovers cover, at most, several met per day, and have thus far only explored a tiny fraction. Of course, we have already scanned, mapped, and searched the entire surface of Mars with satellites and orbiters like the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. Some interesting finds have been made, and amazing things are constantly being revealed. Among the most famous images are the so-called Mars face, or the Martian P pyramids, which could be revealed as paradia, an optical illusion. If we believe we already know Mars too well, that might be problematic. What if aliens dropped 2 or even 10 rovers on Earth, each researching a different region? We know a similar story about Mars, where the environmental conditions are still largely unknown. We know very little about the interrelationships and chain reactions in this world. Violent Martian storms, sudden gas emissions, destruction by Martian dust, and other RISRS are incalculable. The rovers could travel at a speed similar to ours, and they would still only see a very small part of our planet. Satellite scans of the surface would obviously reveal our cities, settlements, natural structures, and perhaps even our habits, but the alien observers would know very little about our planet as a whole. We already know this about the Moon and can prepare for it. But on Mars, there are many more unknown dangers lurking. The first astronauts to learn about them will be at the mercy of this uncertainty for months. Subscribe now to see the most exciting videos yet to come. The Moon's fine and razor-sharp dust destroyed the zippers of the Apollo mission's spacesuits, and particles introduced by the moon dust have caused severe allergic diseases in NASA employees. The rock is also so sharp that equipment must be made of special fibers.